Hi everybody, it's Pete here from See Your Toes again, and this is podcast number 35. Today I have a special guest. Her name is Mimi. She is 70 years old. She had rheumatoid arthritis, and importantly, she was diagnosed by 3 different clinics, experts in the field of Parkinson's, that she in fact had Parkinson's disease. This is her story. It's interesting because in her words she thinks perhaps she was misdiagnosed in the first place, but 3 different sets of experts told her she had Parkinson's. So what would you do if you were diagnosed with Parkinson's disease? As far as everybody knows, it's incurable. Nobody has found any way of sorting it out, yet Mimi managed to put a lot of her symptoms into remission. This is a really interesting story, and I hope you enjoy it. If you have Parkinson's, or if you know somebody with Parkinson's, I strongly urge you to listen to this because I think it'll give you hope. If you have any questions, then you can send them to us on the show notes. There is a spot there for making comments. Thank you. So I will introduce you properly in my introduction offline, and I'll tag that to the front of this.
Okay.
So we don't have to worry about all of that, but I'll just get you to introduce yourself if that's right, Mimi.
Yeah, sure. My name is Mimi Morgan, and I'm going to be 70 years old in September. And I live in a beautiful low country area, Charleston, South Carolina. It's pretty gorgeous here, so I feel very blessed.
South Carolina, I should know. Compared with the dead center of the United States, which direction would that be in?
East.
East, okay.
Where Georgia is, a little bit of Georgia is below me, and then Florida.
Oh, okay, right. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay. That would be quite warm down there, I would have thought.
It is, though it's very nice. We've had a good spring. It's about 84 degrees today. It'll get up 90. But, I rarely wear a coat here, a winter coat, maybe a sweater and a scarf, occasionally a coat. It's probably been 7-8 years since we've had any snow. We do have 4 seasons because we're northern enough that we do, but it's,
right, okay.
They're very mild.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, nice. Now, Mimi, I contacted you on X because you have a situation that you have managed to put under control. Would you like to talk to us about that?
Yeah, sure. Well, I have actually a number of things, and I think the main thing, I responded to a post of yours that was in regards to Parkinson's and neuro symptoms. And I have a number of things. So I was first diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, and then 2 years later was diagnosed with Parkinson's.
Wow.
Disease. And so I went to 3 of the top Parkinson's centers in the United States, was diagnosed the same by all of them, and proceeded, with the medication. I do believe as when we get on the story that I was misdiagnosed, but I definitely had quite a lot of Parkinsonism symptoms that were quite wide. And I just think, despite the fact that I believe I was misdiagnosed, there's a lot of important elements to my story for healing. It's a pretty rapid growing disease. They say if you live long enough, you'll develop it. It's second behind Alzheimer's. And,
oh, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they do. They say if you live long enough, you'll start to develop symptoms. But I was quite ill and on a lot of medication for it, and lived with the diagnosis for 6 years until I started to change how I lived and how I ate, and then 9 months in, started to question my diagnosis.
Okay, so what, for people who don't know, I mean, I guess we've all got a little bit of an idea of Parkinson's, but what sort of symptoms would you, on your daily basis, have to endure?
So for me, the first symptoms that something was off was starting to not be able to swing my left arm and move that quite well, dragging my left leg a little bit. I was left side dominant with illness. A mild tremor, very mild. And, it was the least of all the symptoms. I didn't even notice it, that I was diagnosed with it, but I really couldn't see it. It wasn't, and it was only in my first part of my hand. I definitely had balance symptoms. For me, I had cognitive issues that were pretty soon on. My daughters noticed that when I got up from the chair, there was a hesitation, and when I moved, so my movements were becoming a little slower. And the other thing is they noticed was masking. I started to lose expression in my face. I started to have a little trouble with my speech. And, soon after the additional symptoms, I had nighttime dystonia, which became quite severe, which can be a part of Parkinson's, usually later on. I had a voice tremor. I started to develop nighttime terrors where you act out your dreams.
Oh, okay.
And started to develop autonomic symptoms, which are typical of, that was probably about a year in, that's typical of a Parkinson's plus. And at that point, then I became a multiple system atrophy suspect, which ended up dropping after 5 years. It looks very similar to Parkinson's, but at about the 5-year mark, it splits off and goes its own direction. And that's one of the more advanced forms. Slowness of movement. I had cognitive rigidity. I actually quite had a big range and was on 1,200 milligrams of carbidopa levodopa just to get through my day.
Okay.
And that's a lot. And then additionally, I had cognitive, which for me was the most disturbing. I started having cognitive decline and executive function decline.
Okay. Because I guess most people understand Parkinson's as the tremors and so on.
They do, and that actually does not need to be there in order to get a diagnosis. That's one of 4 symptoms. You need 3. And I think about 25% of people won't have a tremor or develop much of one anyway. But it's the one that's most associated because it's visual. It's the one that you can see.
Yeah. And whereas Parkinson's, of course, a lot of people would see it as a physical issue because you're trembling and stuff, or all of your other symptoms that you've listed, but it's a neurological illness, isn't it? It's your brain that's playing up.
It is. It's your brain. You're not getting messages. So neurogenic bladder was another one a year in, and that's where my brain is not, and my brain and bladder, they're not sending signals. So for that, I'm getting a message every 30 minutes for me that I need to go to the restroom. My bladder's full, and yet it wasn't. And that becomes debilitating because you're not sure, is it full or isn't it full?
Yeah, it's the boy that cried wolf, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And
you can't take that risk.
You can't take that risk, and but you do. You just don't get the messages. The same with the voice, and swallowing can develop. There's a host of symptoms. Not everybody develops the same, but definitely as you're not, and you lose expression. You lose the ability to feel pleasure in a lot of ways. Because you don't have that reward system. So a lot of times people think that you're depressed when it actually is when and there's a term for it, which I keep forgetting, but let's just say you like to play golf and you go out and play golf, you have a great time. Then when you think about playing golf, those memories come up to you and you're like, I'm going to go play golf again. Well, for people with this neurological, we don't have that. We play golf. It was great. We might feel pleasure. But then when we think about golf again, those emotions, those feelings don't come back in. So we kind of have to start all over again because there's kind of a lack of energy and motivation. And it can appear as a depression, and you certainly can have it with Parkinson's, but those are two separate issues. We just don't have the reward system that other people have, that we experience in everyday life and all the things that we do. So life becomes hard and a little challenging to get through.
Yeah, understandably. As with many of these neurological illnesses, how was your mental health?
Well, at first I was in shock, but then there was also something about it was like, okay, now I have an answer, which ultimately wasn't the answer, but I think that's probably pretty normal for people. Now I know what I'm dealing with. As more symptoms develop and life got harder, I started to feel worn down. I started to lose hope, giving up. I'm very adventuresome. So for me, was very active. For me, not being able to do these things, I'm now walking with a cane. I'm now, because your world becomes smaller, so my energy and my hope became smaller. It wasn't dismal, but I certainly, in hindsight, wasn't handling it as I would have hoped. And, I never know whether I could have handled it better. I don't know. It was just pretty challenging for me.
Okay. And so when you're on the drugs, how did the drugs make you feel, by the way? Did they slow you down, speed you up? How did
no.
they...
They actually, I really depended upon them. Unfortunately, the side effect of nausea was quite severe for me. I had a hard time, and I'm on a lot. I'm taking my first dose at 5 a.m. and lying in bed, 40 minutes for it to kick in before I even take a step out of bed. And then my last dose was around 9:30 at 10, hopefully to get me through the night without a lot of waking up, because I was waking up. I had a number of night issues. But no, I depended upon them. I could feel when they stopped working 3.5 hours. They definitely helped me with my slowness. But I was quite sick with them, and eventually had to give up work. Everything just became too much.
Yep. But they didn't, metabolically, did they make you put weight on or anything else? A lot of these neurological medications, of course, end up making people quite large in the process.
Yeah. Well, I did gain weight, and one of the reasons is, and I did become sicker from being on them, was because they compete with protein. So I was on a high carbohydrate diet, very low protein, reserved at night, because again, I'm working, I need to function through the day, and I certainly didn't want to take the risk of anybody noticing that I was sick. I certainly didn't want my employer to notice. I had a high pressure job, and so I'm also eating graham crackers and saltines and bananas, because that's about the only thing I could keep down during the day. Then at night, I'd have a little salad and protein, very little fat. So now I'm becoming sicker, and my health is being affected outside of Parkinson's.
Yeah. Okay. And so that high carb, was that just something you developed, or was it suggested to you by dietitians?
It's highly suggested that I needed to stay away from protein and fat. I could have a little bit at night, but that it would compete with a medication. No, it's a pretty well-known fact.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And so then at some stage you were going along this life direction, and something must have happened to make you decide to change direction, because you did change direction.
Yeah, well, you're right. So about a little over 2 years and 2 months, living with a diagnosis, I happened to sit on a bench on a real pretty February day, enjoying the sunshine. I just walked was actually a good day for me, which is really interesting. I was starting to get up, back walking 2 miles. Exercise is the best thing for this disease. They'll even tell you exercise is the first pill you should take before you take your medication that we're going to prescribe you. I dropped earbuds that were just given to me. I had to walk back, and they were back at the 1 mile mark, so I had walked 4 miles. I had a little bit of extra energy. I was kind of really pleased that I was able to walk that extra distance. And anyway, so I'm sitting on the bench, and that's where I had a stroke, medium-sized stroke. And my life was about to get worse, and whatever I had faced before seemed pretty, not very, of consequence after the stroke. I came through the stroke fine. It was the easiest part of this whole story, but sadly I was infected from the IV with, at the time with Staph A, later diagnosed as MRSA, an infection that spread through my body and then my spine, nearly killing me. And I was quite sick in the hospital for almost 3 months, given a little hope of, I had emergency surgery. That was extremely risky to try to, kill the bacteria in my spine. It was also in my spinal canal. I had an abscess. If it burst and went to my brain, it would be immediate death, or pretty soon. And went home, did physical therapy for about 15 months. And it was at that point, my mailbox story, where I walked to a mailbox that I hadn't gotten too much past every single day, and turned around in absolute defeat, just going to accept my lot, that this was just going to get me, and that I was going to live a pretty restricted life, way worse than I had even thought with anything else. And I had a question posed to me in my mind. Was this, well, okay, you can't do what you want. You can't do much of anything. Do you have anything left in you? What can you do? And my answer was 10 steps. So I took 10 steps, turned around, did 10 steps, and then every day proceeded to do that. I knew that I needed to get some weight off, and I went across the street to see somebody. I'm now on 13 plus medications. And he presented to me a way of living, a way of eating, contrary to anything I'd ever heard. And that was, he wanted me to eat 50% fat, 25% protein, 25 carbs. And I looked at him and said, are you crazy? One, I'm trying to lose weight. You're going to make me fat.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
I can't take this. I can't take this risk. My Parkinson's medicine isn't going to work. He said, you're a sick lady. Will you trust me? And, I knew that if I went to the doctors, I was going to get another medication, just live this way. And I trusted them. And that was one of the best things I've ever done.
And that's quite amazing, to trust somebody who is, in your mind, potentially giving you a death sentence, because it's kind of like the way you're going isn't working.
Right.
But are you going to get, is one of those things, is the cure worse than the ailment, for you to decide to take that leap of faith? That's quite amazing. I'm impressed with that, because a lot of people, like you say, would have said, I need to find somebody else to talk to.
Yeah.
Who makes more sense.
Yeah. I listened to my intuition when it said, what can you do? And I'm like, I have 10 steps. And I accepted that, and I kept doing 10 steps. So that opened the window for me then, listening to my intuition. And I had a connection with him. He was a man that was also sick. We spent about an hour and a half talking. And I just, what they were telling me to do wasn't working. And I knew I wasn't going to live long if I kept listening to them. So I'm not sure really what kind of choice.
Yeah, that's
what
right.
kind of choice
exactly.
I had at this point. And, within 30 days, I didn't feel better, but I wasn't feeling sicker. And I had been feeling sicker every month. Every month I was getting worse.
Yeah.
Every month something was popping up. And now we're nothing is. And that fueled me to keep going.
Okay. So, yes. And so I guess you didn't tell that to your doctors either, that you've changed your diet, because that would have gone down like a lead balloon.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I kept it to myself. I didn't tell anybody.
Yeah, that's probably the safest measure.
Well, it is. I just was like, this was my secret with him. I just was going to keep going, and I met him every week, and had to talk me off the cliff a lot. I kept walking. I kept doing that, and then now I'm getting a little bit of energy, so I'm starting to get some sun. I'm starting to want to be outside. I'm starting to, and I stay with those 10 steps. I didn't do any more. I still physically, needed a cane. I still physically, everything was difficult. I had to sit to wash my hair. I couldn't empty the bottom of a dishwasher. I still need a lot of rest. Movement was very restricted, but I just kept doing with these things, and that was enough to just give me a little bit of hope. And it was probably about 3 months I started to feel improved, and started to intuitively add a little more fat in my diet. And it was about pretty close to the 9-month mark where I started to get up into ketosis, 70-80% fat, and really started to feel good. And that's where the light bulb went off in my head, and I realized the connection between food and illness, and where I also started to question, I'm not sure I have Parkinson's because my symptoms are getting better. And I voiced it to him, and I voiced it to nobody else.
Okay. So when you're saying that your symptoms got better and that's why you're thinking you didn't have Parkinson's, is that because Parkinson's is, and I don't know the answer to this, but is that because you're thinking Parkinson's is irreversible? Would that be fair to say?
I would say that would be fair to say. I mean, we're told that it's not, and I'm going to say that that's so accurate that why I think I'm misdiagnosed is because we're told it isn't irreversible. And I think that's a valid question to consider.
And I guess that's the problem too, is from the medical fraternity, they see somebody like you who comes in, and let's face it, by your own admission, you had quite a few different symptoms for different things, and then you ended up with a stroke, for goodness sake, just to add to the list. You even had rheumatoid arthritis at the start there. And so I guess it can be easy for them to decide to say, right, you've got Parkinson's as well, whereas if in effect you've got a bunch of symptoms that are mimicking Parkinson's. Would you say that, or would you think honestly now that you had Parkinson's or you had symptoms that looked like Parkinson's?
Gee, that's a really good question.
Or is there any difference? Because let's face it, again.
Well, that's another good question.
Exactly. Can doctors emphatically say to a person, you have Parkinson's, as opposed to you have all of these symptoms who could be, they could all be Parkinson's, or they could all be a range of other neurological disorders that are coming up with the same symptoms. I guess it's the same. It's the same story where people love to put stuff into a box, including illnesses and diseases. I've got schizophrenia. I've got bipolar disorder. What about the person who's got both? What about the person who's schizophrenic one day and bipolar the next day, and then depressed? And then, these are all neurological situations, of course. They're all, and perhaps it's the same with Parkinson's.
Well, it's a good question, because when you don't have those symptoms any longer, does that mean you never had the disease, or does that mean that it's gone? Or is it a result, of a number of things and you've just treated it? So that really is a good question. You are right. We are put in a box. We are. I can use that same theory for rheumatoid arthritis. I can use, which is in complete remission. I was on medications that was over $50,000-$60,000 a year for that illness alone.
Wow.
Taking not only injections, methotrexate, the prednisone, and the Plaquenil. I'm off of it all. So does that mean I never had it, or does that mean, I could do that with everything? So that is a good question, and we are taught that this is irreversible. And I'm not sure I believe that.
Yeah.
I think we can. I think there's much we can do, and clearly for the array and the extent of symptoms on 1,200 milligrams to keep it under control. That's an enormous amount of medication. I mean, I think 1,800 is the max. So I'm getting pretty high up for somebody just 6 years in the illness. And I am completely fine with no symptoms, including reversing my cognitive decline. I've reversed it.
Because it's the same situation that I've had with other guests on this podcast channel. I've had Connor with Crohn's. I've had bipolar. I've had a number of different ones. I had Harmony last week with schizophrenia. Now she says that changing her diet hasn't changed her. She hasn't got rid of schizophrenia, but she's got it under control. And I know with the Crohn's, with sleep apnea, with other things, if these people go back to the diet and the lifestyle they were in, the stuff comes back. And that suggests that they've put these things into remission. They haven't got rid of them. They haven't cured them, but they've placed them in remission, almost as if they're just sleeping in the background. But while they have changed their lifestyles, they've managed to control them. And let's face it, I think that's pretty darn good, especially controlling them without meds or reducing their meds in the process.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And then that brings up the question: can you prevent these from even happening in the first place?
Yes,
because
exactly.
I absolutely 100% believe that if I had. And I spent a good part of my life, not in my younger years, but definitely 20s on up, living a basically fat-free, low-protein diet. I was a healthy eater, but I 100% know that if I had lived and eaten even remotely close to how I do now, which is a very high-fat diet and a good amount of protein, very few carbs, I would have never had these symptoms or these illnesses in the first place.
And you're quite right. You hit the nail on the head there where you said, I used to be on a healthy diet, because that's what we all thought was a healthy diet. We were all told as kids that fats are bad, saturated fats are going to send you to hell, fiber's good, salt's bad, cholesterol is bad. And so we all went through that, and we all went through I think any so-called healthy people have, done the sort of thing where they have granola and muesli in the mornings and that glass of orange juice, and they keep their fat levels down, and they keep their healthy carbs up and all this sort of stuff. And they eat a bit of protein, because it was only a few years ago we were all told that protein was bad as well.
Correct. Yeah.
It was going to destroy our kidneys. Extra protein, so we had to stop all of that. Now, of course, the craze is red meat's going to kill us all. And so you have all of these things, and we all did what we thought was a healthy diet, which was a high carbohydrate diet of low glycemic foods, so foods that weren't sugar related but were still carbohydrates, moderate amounts of protein, chicken, fish, of course, that sort of stuff. Try to stay well away from the fat. Bacon is bad. And so we all thought that was a healthy option because that's what we were told. We were told that by the health authorities, by the governments, by everybody, and people still are, of course, now.
I know, sadly.
And then there's a few of us, like yourself and myself, who are saying, well, actually, I don't believe that was healthy anymore. That with all the best meaning in the world, that was probably very unhealthy. And therefore, you wonder how many chronic diseases we have these days, especially as we all get older, that perhaps we should never have had.
Yeah, I'm going to say most of them.
Yeah,
I'm going to say most of them. I mean, I certainly think for me, it isn't just food, it's exercise, sun. Another thing they say to avoid, I live pretty close to circadian rhythm lifestyle, avoiding blue light. I'm pretty unplugged. I mean, I am on Twitter and I'm a laptop, but I'm unplugged from TV. And I'm my shoes are off. I'm walking in the sand. I'm walking on the grass. I live a lifestyle connected to a lot of things that I grew up with because I'm old enough that we got away from. So I think it's other things, but I'm going to say, if we hadn't changed our diets because we were told it was healthy, we wouldn't be where we are.
Yeah.
I just don't believe it would have happened.
It's even like athletes. You got these guys who are chugging back the sugary drinks all the time to up their energy levels. Because I'm a distance athlete, I need to knock back these pure glucose drinks every half hour, all that sort of stuff. And next thing, they're being diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. It's like, but I'm really healthy. You are, and your lifestyle has given you type 2 diabetes because you have screwed up your whole body.
Right.
Because it's not designed for that.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit then about, because I'm sure there's lots of people out there who maybe see some of your symptoms in themselves and they're thinking, where do I start then? I mean, just saying 50 and then you went up to 70% fat. What does that entail on a daily basis?
Well, it's a little different for me now because I'm carnivore now. I decided to streamline just because the MRSA, the last part, that affected my immune system, and so that's sort of my last hurdle to try to get past. But I started to eat a lot of beef. I mean, that's really what I started to increase more, and I started to eat the fat. And then I started to want more. So, I just allowed I made sure that I was always gluten-free, lectin-free, oxalate-free, which means I'm pretty stripping out all the vegetables at this point when I first started, because I was eating 25% carbs. So it may have been avocado, sweet potato once or so a week. I still was having salads. Nightshades wreak havoc on my RA. So I would definitely say...
To put people in the picture, a nightshade would include tomatoes, capsicums, all that sort of stuff, all the solanaceous plants.
Red pepper, any kind of red peppers or red pepper. Cayenne, not so much because the shell's out. Eggplants, some of your squashes. I mean, even now, if I am traveling, I might not be as strict, and I might have something with a nightshade, especially a pepper, where the next day I can just feel my joints inflamed. So I stay away from that. Beans I eliminated. They have a lot of lectins. They can have oxalates. I just started to remove all of those because I'm just starting to feel better eliminating a lot of these things. So maybe just a little bit of salads, and then definitely adding the beef and the more fat, avocado. Add a little MCT oil to try to get my fats up that high.
Yeah. That is tricky, isn't it? Because getting your, I've tried carnivore off and on, and to be honest, it's more on than off these days compared with keto. I've been keto a long time, but I'm sort of finding myself drifting towards being more carnivore than keto. I guess that's that ketovore business that they talk about.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, getting the amount of fat that I need becomes a little bit challenging, because although I love pork belly and lamb chops, I had lamb chops last night, from New Zealand, by the way. See,
Oh, wow.
hang on, there it is. There,
Okay.
that's our New Zealand rugby team there.
Okay.
Lamb chops full of fat, but it is difficult to get enough fat in, perhaps.
It is. So then sometimes I would add an avocado, or then I'd start to add MCT oil to it. And I still take that. I'm actually back taking it because I'm starting to feel like, I'm not sure I'm getting enough fat. Chicken, maybe once or twice a year, only because I have to, or, which means I'm at somebody's house. It's like, why bother having chicken? I do eat oysters, and I do eat salmon and cod. Bacon's a garnish for me, which means I'm not going to eat a plate of bacon. But I do, I might wrap it around a piece of cod.
Yeah.
I have farm butter, and I'm generous with it. And I eat beef 5 or 6 times a week, and I eat a pound and a half. Eat till I'm full. I've just given up eggs in January. I'm actually not an egg eater. I got myself back eating eggs. I gave them up in January. I'm not sure. It's a great source of protein. But I think I just do better with a real simple diet. I was really, and maybe somebody can get away not that simple, but I was really sick. So for me, just keeping it really streamlined, I feel the best. I keep trying dairy, including making my own kefir and yogurt. Even went to a cheese making class to make goat cheese with raw goat. I just can't do dairy.
Okay.
So other than butter, I just need to eliminate it.
Okay, what happens when you eat dairy, like cheese and stuff?
I think it slows me down. Definitely, I feel like it puts weight on me. I don't maintain. I definitely think it can trigger cravings. I just do better with a real simple diet. And here's the thing, when you start to get well enough and you get rid of the carbs, you start to sleep well, which, I was lucky if I got 3 hours a night. I sometimes go 3 days totally awake, unable to sleep. I also had severe restless leg syndrome along with this. Now I sleep, 8 to 10 hours a night. When all these things start to improve and your body heals, it's able to figure out what it needs, and you're able to listen to it if you slow down enough. And for me, because people say, well, what do you eat? I just listen to my body. Some days, especially if I train hard, and I do train very hard, that's part of this equation of getting well. Sometimes I need a pound and a half. I'm not a big woman. I'm 5'3", 120, but sometimes I need a pound and a half of beef for my meal. Sometimes I need 2 meals. Sometimes I need 1.
Yeah, okay.
And I don't think it's easy to figure that out when you're sick. When you're sick, I think you just have to kind of have a plan, and then eventually you'll be able to figure out what you need day to day.
Yeah. And a lot of people who are listening, who are used to eating lots of carbohydrates and a little bit of protein and no fat, of course, they'll be a bit freaky right now, because they're like, I want to get better, but eating meat all the time, I'd rather kill myself. And the fact remains, though, that once you start feeling a little bit better like this, and once you wean yourself off the sugars and the carbohydrates, the bread, the potatoes, the pasta, you don't want cheesy mac all the time, then you realize that this food actually isn't too darn bad. And like you say, for all the people out there who have gone through the calorie restriction methods of losing weight, well, you don't really, in my opinion, you can kick that out the door too, because you eat until you're full, and then you don't eat again until you're hungry.
Correct. And real hunger, not you think you're hungry, real hunger.
Not peckish. Yeah, that's
but
right.
Here's the thing. If you increase your fats and protein, for me, people say, how do you do it? It's like, add more fat, more protein, keep doing that. And as you keep doing that, you'll naturally stop craving the carbs. And that's how you eliminate them. You don't have to go through
Yeah.
torturous pain. And I don't think it does you any good. But what does you good is if you want to have that potato, but make sure you have a bigger piece of meat and you eat all the fat on the steak. Because the next time you serve yourself that meal, you're going to want the steak and the fat, and you're going to want a half a potato. And then eventually you're not going to want a potato.
And eat the steak and the fat first, thinking that potato is your dessert afterwards, your reward, because that way you're filling yourself up on the protein and the fat, of course. Otherwise, if you have it around the other way, you might fill yourself up on the potato and then not feel like the fat at the end, which is the good bit.
Absolutely correct.
Now, I might be jumping around a little bit. Here, you mentioned MRSA. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, so originally it was Staph A, which is Staphylococcus aureus, which is a deadly bacteria. It's treated with antibiotics. Pretty much all of us carry it. Our body keeps it at bay. I wasn't responding to the antibiotics, and I was on quite a few, which is why it was allowed to spread to my spine. Mine was bloodborne from the IV. It was apparently contaminated. Some people can get it on their skin when you have surgery, or if you have a cut and there's a bacteria in. MRSA is methicillin resistant, which means it's antibiotic resistant. It is very hard to kill, and it encapsulates like cancer does. Lyme disease is another one that can encapsulate, and it hides in your body waiting for an opportune time. That happens if it's been allowed to seed, which means plant itself in your body, which they believe mine did. I was told I was on antibiotics for 3.5 years. I was told to be on for life. I took myself off of them 2 years this month, actually, just a couple of days ago. I took the risk, knowing that it could easily come back. It's very hard to kill. It's very hard to fight when it spreads to the bone. Mine was the spine, destroying my vertebrae and my disc, which then collapsed. It's pretty hard. Also, being in the spinal canal, I mean, it's really hard to kill.
Yeah. It's found its most opportune place as far as it's concerned, knowing that how difficult it is for anybody to get it the hell out of there.
Yeah, and it's going to just hide and wait for a time when your immune system's weak to rear its head. Yeah. I had an episode of it a year ago. It came back 2 times. But I was able, topical, which was interesting. Never had a topical. On one finger, I was able to beat it back. And it was then after that I really started to go to the hard corner of really trying to feed my body the most nutrient-dense food all the time to try to strengthen my immune system to fight it and keep it at bay.
Yeah. Okay. There was something I was going to say about that, but it slipped out of my head again. But you certainly, that's right. So with regard to your spine, you said that your vertebrae collapsed. I take it you had an operation on that or something of that nature then?
I can never have metal in my body again, unless it's like absolutely... like if I were to shatter my hip and I'll be in a wheelchair, if I decide I want to take a risk, I can get something. Other than that, I'm to never have, because that's just an opportune time for it to come back. So no, I had surgical debridement, and they to hose down my spine, but they allowed my spine to self-fuse.
Oh, okay.
Vertebrae L2 through 4, and so I have an extra curve for it. Most people can't see it. I notice it. If you're a trainer, physical therapist, you can see a little extra curve. I work hard to keep it straight. I lost about 1.5 inches. A little bit more on one side than the other.
Okay. So there's 2 things I want to talk to you about. and no doubt we'll drift off into all sorts of other subjects as well. The first one you've already mentioned to a certain degree is exercise.
Right.
What does your exercise look like on a daily, weekly basis?
Well, now it's changed. It's taken me a long time. It's taken me quite a few years to get here. It was very slow progress. I was sent home after 3 months with a walker.
Well, that's right. You started off being able to walk 10 steps, let's
Right.
face it.
And I kept walking those 10 steps and eventually got back to the 2 miles. And I kept walking because as my diet's improving, I'm having energy. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling healthy. I'm able to walk a little bit more. About 2 years ago in April, I was diagnosed with borderline osteoporosis. They wanted me to put me on medication. I absolutely refused, and I hired a weight trainer. I have a 75-year-old woman who's been a professional trainer for ages, and I trust her, and I started weight training. I weight train privately with her. It's the best money I spend other than my beef. I train with her 3 times a week for an hour. And we slowly built. I've gotten quite strong and capable of doing a lot. So I do that 3 times a week. I walk. I'm now up walking. I'm training to walk the French Way across northern Spain, which is about 15, 20 miles a day. So I'm up to about 12 miles now. So I do one long 12-mile walk once a week, and then I do 3 shorter ones. And on Saturday, I do a group circuit training, Tabata, which is 20 or 40 seconds on, 10 or 20 seconds off. And then I have one rest day, Tuesday. Today is my rest day. So I'm pretty active.
Yeah.
I get a lot of exercise. I go to bed like a kid who's played outside at night and is exhausted. So
yeah.
Which is what we're supposed to do, I believe. We're supposed to
Well,
move.
exactly. You're supposed to think, oh, God, thank goodness for bed.
That's exactly right. I climbed into bed last night, and it's like, oh, it felt so good. I'm so tired.
This feels great.
I played hard. I got sun. I trained hard. I walked hard. It was a good day.
Yeah. So did your osteoporosis lady, did she get you on weights and stuff to strengthen your
My
bones?
weight trainer, yes, I do weights. Yeah. Started with probably 2 pounds. Now I'm doing, 20 pound bicep curls. I can leg press 265. I mean, I started with nothing. I can do a lot now, but it's been very slow. I have a lot of workarounds. I have a partial torn rotator cuff on my left side and a partial torn meniscus on my right. I'm actually walking with my leg brace again, not to mention my spine. So we have a lot of workarounds. That's never, ever an excuse not to do something. She finds a way for me.
Are the likes of the rotator cuff, are they just things that you have done while you're busy and you've managed to pull something, or what's the drill there?
I think, they say, everybody's got something torn somewhere. You know what I mean? You live to, I rode horses. I show competitively. I've been dumped a gazillion times. I've done all sorts of, adventure activities. I mean, eventually something's just going to start wearing. And I also have, pretty bad osteoarthritis. I mean, I can't expect to get to my age without some, bumps and scrapes and torn ligaments and joints, right?
Yep, that's right. You're quite right. I've got half a dozen screws holding my right shoulder together, and I noticed when I'm driving today, and it's nothing to do with this half a dozen screws because it's actually quite a strong shoulder these days because that was 4 years ago I got it screwed back together. But I just, like you say, there's always a niggle. There's always, a chronic pain somewhere. But then I work hard at the gym. I really pushed myself.
Yeah, I did too.
And I think, and it feels good. It feels good to push yourself.
It really does. One of my mottos is you can do hard things. It feels absolutely good to push myself. when I got out of the hospital, I lived in a townhouse that had 27 steps. Well, I never went back in because they said I'd never be able to go back up steps again. Certainly not 27. Maybe 5, maybe 10 with around, but I couldn't live day to day doing 27 steps to get from one end of my townhouse out the door. And now part of my training, well, we started probably about 6 months on, is on Mondays I carry a 20-pound kettlebell and I run up and down a flight of stairs until I can't move. And I think it's important to, it gives me a great sense of victory because they said I'd never be able to do stairs, and here I run with a kettlebell. But, when we get older, our world becomes, if we allow it, our world becomes smaller. And
Yeah.
I live each day making sure that my world is as big as possible, so that I can get up off the floor without my hands. I can run up and down stairs now so that if something were to happen, I'll be able to walk them because I ran up them when I could. And so I try to live my day like that each day.
I was thinking that yesterday, 2 things. I was at the gym doing squats and I did my fourth and last set, and I thought, right, this is going to hurt. And normally I hate squats. I do them all the time, but I hate them. But this time I thought, no, this is going to hurt and you're going to dig in. And I did, and I was really proud of myself. And then when I was doing the deadlifts afterwards, because I have a bit of a grueling session right at the moment, I do 2 or 3 leg days a week, just for the meantime. Yeah, so I did legs on Friday and then legs last night, which was Monday again. And I pushed heavier than I did on Friday. And each day I am going up a little bit. But then I got on the deadlifts and I got to a certain weight and I thought, man, it was 5 or 6 years ago, the weight that I was lifting was my 1 rep max. And last night I did 5 of them in a row. And I'm 60. And for people who think, you should rest, you should look after yourself when you get old, it's like crap. No, I'm kind of the opposite. Yes, you got to watch yourself. Yeah. But that's when you got to work even harder. If you're going to use it or lose it.
Yeah. Oh, you're exactly right. I mean, as I said, I'm going to be 70 in September. People look at me like I'm absolutely mad. Training men and women, like, what are you training? And I train hard with a trainer. Why are you training this hard? Why are you walking this many miles on top of everything? And it's, well, one, because I can, but I'm really fit. There's not much that I can't do, and I want to stay this way as long as I can.
You said that
we're supposed to move. We're not supposed to. I have friends who barely get out of a chair when they sit in it. I want to be able to get out of a chair with ease. And we just are. We've been convinced that aging is our medications, illness, disease, immobility, we're to do less. And I'm like, oh no, I'm just like you. I'm the opposite.
Yeah. Well done. You've got 10 years on me, but I'd like to think that in 10 years' time I'll be as active as you are.
No doubt more because you started earlier than me.
Well, that's true, exactly. And I didn't have all of your underlying issues to start off with. My starting was a little bit different from yours. For the metric people, you said that you were 120 pounds?
About 120, yeah. I put on 10 pounds when I started 2 years ago. I was skinny, frail, a bag of bones. And so, yeah, I've got 10 pounds on, and I'm 5'3".
Okay. And for metric people out there, 120 pounds is 54.5 kilograms. And if I divide that, 54.5 divided by 6.7, I think, don't quote me, it's about 8 stone. these Brits, I'm a Kiwi, but I live in Britain, and I tell them that something's 55 kilos. Like, oh, how many stone is that? I've got
I've
no
never
idea.
heard of stone before.
No, all the Brits will know it in stone.
Stones. Okay.
How many stone are you? So, yeah, I think there's 6.7 kilograms in a stone. Now, another subject is fasting. Do you do fasting?
I do. So I did intermittent fasting for years. I still do. I'm a little bit reversed. So now I'll maybe have something. I fast before training and when I train. I'm one of these people that I get nauseous every time I train. There's just no work around it. So I'll fast and then I'll train, and I usually have my meal before 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Sometime between 1 and 4 will be my main meal. Sometimes in the morning, and sometimes even before training, I'll have bone broth that I make myself. It might have a couple tablespoons or a little bit of meat in it, and I seem to be fine with that. It doesn't make me any more nauseous, but yeah. So I stop. I'm up early. I'm up, watch the sunrise. I'm up by 5 a.m. I work 3 days a week part time, and I'm up at 4 a.m. to get to my job.
Wow.
So I'm in bed by 8:30. So I'm done eating well by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, with rare occasion.
Yeah. And what time do you train then? Is it in late morning?
Usually right after work. So I'm done with work at 12:30.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I'll train like at 1 o'clock. Mondays I train at 10. So obviously I'm fasted. And I just work 2 or 3 days a week part time. Keeps me sharp. How to learn a computer system. It's good to. And I work at a senior center actually back in the fitness section. So it's really good.
Okay. So do you do, or have you done longer period fasting?
I have. I actually need to do another one. So I've gone like 76 hours, haven't gone longer. And I absolutely loved it. Had the first day is harder, and I'm not sure that's not more mental than anything else, or maybe body adjusting. Once I got past the day, it was really pretty easy. And then, interesting enough, then you just lose your appetite, and I get really charged. So,
yeah, that's funny, isn't it? So,
yeah.
76 hours is 3.16 days. So it's 3 days and a bit. I've managed 48 hours, and it's funny because at the end of that 48 hours before I ate, I went to the gym, and I think I did a legs day that day, and I blew it. I blasted it, and it's like. I'm saying to people at the gym, I haven't eaten for 2 days, and they're like, what the hell? And they're expecting me to flake out, but I'm literally bouncing off the walls, all these damn ketones flooding through my veins.
Is that what it is? Because I just was like, I could, like, the best workout I ever had. I mean, I just was like, where is this coming from? And at the time, I didn't even think about it being the ketones. Yeah. Oh my God! I felt sharper. I felt clearer. I mean, everything about it was like, wow. And it was interesting because most of the time I realized, okay, I think I'm hungry, and actually I'm really thirsty.
Yeah,
I'm not hungry. It's a good measure to really get in touch with what real hunger is and how little we actually need to eat, and we don't need to eat. I'm one of these, I don't think we need to eat often. 1 or 2 meals, that's plenty for us.
Yeah. And I think you're quite right. And I think that our ancestors, of course, would have spent quite a bit of time where a day here, a few days there, maybe a week that they couldn't eat because they didn't find any prey, especially in the middle of winter.
Yeah.
If you're stuck in the snow somewhere, you can't get out of the cave. You could easily spend a week in there or longer and not eat anything. And I think we are designed for that process. We're certainly not designed to eat 3 big meals a day.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do think we're designed. I do feel the body functions pretty optimal that way too.
Yeah. I do find I eat kind of 2 meals a day, 11 o'clock-ish, 10:30. And then after the gym, which I train at the gym after my day job, so that's sort of like 5:30 at night for an hour. So I get home kind of by 6:30 to 7 and eat then, which is kind of a bit late. Everyone tells me it's too late to eat, but it's just how my day is. There's nowhere else to put a good meal in unless I have my main meal at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
So,
well, if it works for you.
Yeah, that's right.
And I switch it around. I used to intermittent fast and not have a meal till 1 and then have my meal at 5. I just find that since I go to bed so early, I do better to finish eating earlier.
Yep, I understand that. So then how do you feel now as far as all of these illnesses you had? You had, let's call it Parkinson's or Parkinson's-like diseases, your rheumatoid arthritis, all of your other aches and pains and illnesses, and, well, when I say aches and pains, that's underrating it. All of your chronic and neurological diseases. How do you feel on a daily basis now?
Oh, I can't ever remember feeling this awesome. So I also had asthma since I was 2. I haven't seen a doctor in 2 years, and I've been off of all medications and symptom-free for 2 years.
Wow.
I feel absolutely incredible. I am a force to be reckoned with. Enormous amount. I mean, I really am. I have a ton of energy. I walk on, I have a bridge that's, right around the corner, has the only hill in town. It's a gorgeous bridge. You should look it up, the Ravenel Bridge. I post a sunset picture every night. I mean, I'll go back and forth that thing. And I mean, I'm flying past people that are, 40, 50 years younger than me. I've just got a ton of energy. I wake up each day grateful. I feel, enormously blessed. I have time with creativity. My attitude's great. My mind is sharp. I
everything that you weren't.
Everything.
Yeah.
And
everything
probably
that you
better
weren't
in
a
my
few years
whole
ago.
life, I feel.
Yeah. And you'd have to say most of that, well, the trigger for all of that was your change in diet, wasn't it? So your trigger all of that was getting into a high-fat, high-protein, or comparatively high-protein, low-carb situation, and then from there, that gave you the impetus, and the impetus isn't the right word, gave you the momentum to make further changes as you went down the track.
Oh, absolutely. If I were to change my diet and go back to what I was doing, I'd be downhill in a heartbeat.
Yeah. And that's, like I said, that's where it's what you've done is put everything into remission, because I'm a firm believer that some people can't cope with carbohydrates where other people can probably cope with them better. And how well you can cope with them is how many chronic diseases come to bite you on the backside.
Yeah, I believe you're right.
As a result, after 20 or 30 years, let's face it, nobody's having these chronic diseases. Well, a lot of people aren't when they're 25, 30, and they're all full of, all you've got to do is eat less and exercise more. They're the ones that are telling us all how to do it. But it's after 20 years or a bit longer that all of these chronic illnesses are coming back to bite everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because, I didn't have them when I was 50 or 40. I did weight train when I was then, because it hadn't accumulated and been enough. After a while, you keep going on another decade, it catches up. I think definitely if you get one, then you are primed for getting another one, and another one.
Yeah, I agree. And I think
Go ahead.
Sorry. No, sorry. You go.
No, so, and then I think, you have to be stricter. I think you can't deviate as much because now you've got multiple ones, and your body has gone through a lot more than if you just catch it. But yeah, I do think once you get one, you're just primed for another system fail somewhere.
Which makes sense because you've got the first one, this is the thing about these chronic illnesses, and I think a lot of people don't realize when they're told that they've got heart disease or they've got type 2 diabetes, and so on, they're thinking, oh, how did that happen? It's like, well, it didn't just happen. It's happened over the last 20 years. All you're suddenly seeing is a change in the symptoms. And that's, I think, like you say, once one of those things is showing up, then chances are all the others will show up because they're just the next train down the train tracks.
Yeah, you're right. And you know, the human body's ability to heal is absolutely fascinating beyond words. I mean, we have an enormous amount to heal. So that tells me that our body has an enormous amount of ability to keep these chronic illnesses at bay for as long as it can. And then when it breaks, then the floodgates can open.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And of course, it doesn't help. I know I'm deviating slightly here. It doesn't help when somebody's been told that they have high cholesterol, so the doctor puts them on statins.
Right.
Cholesterol, I love the subject of cholesterol because it's such an amazing product that we all have. And yet it's been so villainized, and you know, people get thrown on statins and it screws everything up, screws up their sex life, it screws up their brain, it screws up their ability to remember their own name,
their muscles,
muscles, it puts weight on, it does everything to no good level at all because it's not even attacking the right thing. And that's where, like you say, the human body is amazing. And if we look after it, it's just incredible what it can do. Except we haven't been looking after our bodies very well. And we've not known that, of course. A lot of us have thought we are.
Right.
We've been let's not go too much down that, but we've been led down the garden path a little bit with regard to what's healthy. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that was actually the last time I saw a doctor. She wanted to put me on statins. No. I just walked away because, of course, my cholesterol number is higher. By the way, my triglycerides are 56, which is absolutely stellar. They lowered.
Yeah. And that's the thing, because people will be thinking, oh, no wonder her cholesterol is high. She's eating all that red meat. But my cholesterol's high too. And I was at the doctor's and the doctor lady said, oh, your cholesterol is very high, Pete. And I said, yep. I expected it to be.
Yeah.
And then she tested my blood pressure and I said, how's that? And she said, her words, not mine. She said, that is beautifully normal. And that was the way she phrased it. My blood pressure could not have been better.
Yeah, mine as well. I'm right there with you.
Yeah, and yet my cholesterol was high. Now, my LDL cholesterol was high compared with what they're used to, but I strongly believe that's because they're used to looking at people who eat lots of carbs, and so their numbers are different from ours.
Correct. I'm right there with you.
Yeah, and I looked at my triglycerides when I finally got my blood test results back, and like you say, my triglycerides were nice and low. My triglyceride to HDL was very low. It was great. It was like, I'm more than happy with where my LDL is parked because my ratio is brilliant.
So is mine. Mine's 50. I think mine's the 0.57. I'm well below the 1, and they say below 2 is good. So it's like, plus the fact is I feel good. I mean, people say to me, aren't you getting, don't you need to go to the doctor? I'm like, well, there's nothing wrong with me. Why do I need to go to the doctor? I mean, I don't, but don't you need to go to check to make sure you're okay? I'm absolutely wonderful. I have no symptoms of anything. I feel great. I don't need to go. Don't you need blood work? And now I haven't had blood work in 2 years, and I'm like, no, I don't need blood work. I feel fabulous. I'll go if something's the matter, but because like you said, I think some of these numbers are for another population, a sick population. I don't think a lot of these things really take into account of healthy. And actually the fact that they have a low and a high even says that they're taking into account not a great group in their numbers.
Yeah, and their numbers their safety numbers keep changing anyway, so who
Right.
knows? But for anyone listening, it's your triglyceride to HDL ratio. If you get a blood test, have a look at those two. Triglyceride on the top, HDL on the bottom. Stick them two together, and that tells you the ratio. And that triglyceride will be dependent on how many carbs you eat, because the carbs turn to sugar, and the sugar turns to triglycerides, and the triglycerides are what give you your problems, including fatty liver and heart disease. So it's not your LDL. Yeah. Anyway, that's my rave. There you go. Do you have anything else you'd like to talk about, Mimi?
Oh, no, I don't think so. Unless you have any other questions. We covered quite a lot.
Yeah, I think we've covered quite a bit, to be honest. Well, in that case, thank you very much for spending your time with me today. I hope that you've helped a few people who are in the situation that you were in, and give them hope, really, isn't it? That's what it's about.
It really is about hope, and thank you so much for having me. You know, I hear a lot from a lot of people, and especially people that, because there aren't many my age who have been able to turn around from so many illnesses as I have. And so, you know, I've heard from a lot of people that were about to give up hope or thought they were too old to turn it around. And then from a lot of younger people who were sort of dreading, thinking that they were having to live with the inevitable. And I think it's important that really, it doesn't mean it's not hard, because it's certainly been hard for me to recover at my age, but it is absolutely possible. And and every decision that I make now is this the best thing for my health, and then that makes it really easy for me to make the right decision.
And you also can't discount the fact that it took a lot of hard work and a lot of sweat. And so anybody looking down this path has to realize that there probably is a pill that can make it easier, but it's not going to make it better.
Correct.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, caveat, if you're on medication, please don't suddenly go on a keto diet and throw the medication away. That's what your doctor is for while you're getting better.
Correct.
But
correct.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, Mimi, and thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time and for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Mimi. I would like to think everybody got something out of that. She's a wonderful person with a lot of energy, and I hope she has inspired you into, even if you don't have the illnesses she had, I think there's inspiration there for us all to get our act together a little bit more. If you want to make comments or ask Mimi anything, then you can do so in the show notes. There's a little spot there that you can leave a request or a question. By the way, these podcasts I do are non-profit. I don't make any money out of them. If you feel like making a donation, then there is also a little slot on there in your show notes where you can clip on there making a donation of sorts. £3, £5, something like that. Making podcasts is expensive. There's no two ways about it. There are a lot of subscriptions that I have to do. So if you do feel like it, I would really appreciate it. In the meantime, thank you very much for coming and listening, and I hope you'll listen to future episodes. By the way, it's really important as a caveat that what you've heard here is Mimi's opinion and my opinion. They are not medical explanations. If you are on medication, then please don't stop your medication and race out and do what we've or what Mimi has done. Any changes you make are great, but make sure that you get them sorted out with your clinician before you make any rash moves. So please stay on your medications until your doctor says, yep, you're looking good, and then they will help you wean off them. So that's just a caveat. Look after yourselves, please. Use common sense, and have a good day. Thank you very much.